Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into one of history's most iconic and, let's be honest, most scandalous stories, the tale of Lady Godiva. We all know the basics, right? A noblewoman rides naked through the streets of Coventry on a horse to protest her husband's harsh taxes. It's a story of courage, sacrifice, and a serious commitment to public protest. But what if I told you that the story we all know might just be the tip of the iceberg? What if the real motives behind her legendary ride were far more complex, personal, and even political than we've been led to believe? For centuries, Lady Godiva has been celebrated as a folk hero, a champion of the common people. The classic version of the story, first recorded by monks, centuries after the event supposedly took place, paints a very clear picture. Her husband Leofric, the Earl of Mercia, was a powerful and ruthless man who imposed crippling taxes on his subjects in Coventry. Godiva, moved by their suffering, repeatedly begged him to lower the burden. Fed up with her pleas, Leofric supposedly issued a challenge. He would grant her request only if she rode naked through the marketplace. He probably thought it was an impossible dare, something to shut her up for good. But he underestimated his wife. To his shock, Godiva agreed. She asked the townspeople to stay indoors and shut their windows, and then, with only her long hair to cover her, she mounted her horse and completed the ride. Leofric, true to his word, abolished the taxes, and thus, a legend was born. It's a fantastic story. It has drama, a clear villain, a selfless heroine, and a happy ending. It's the kind of tale that inspires art, poetry, and even chocolates. But as historians, we have to ask the tough questions. How much of this story is actual fact, and how much is fiction, embellished over hundreds of years? When we start digging into the historical records, things get a little murky. First, let's talk about the historical figures themselves. Lady Godiva and Earl Leofric were very real people. They were one of the most powerful couples in 11th century Anglo-Saxon England, second only to the king and queen. Leofric was a formidable political player, the Earl of Mercia, a vast and influential territory, and Godiva, or Gogifu, as she was known in Old English, was a significant landowner in her own right, which was highly unusual for a woman at the time. She wasn't just the Earl's wife. She was a power player herself, possessing wealth and influence. This is our first clue that she was more than just a passive, pious figure. Now, here's the biggest bombshell for the traditional story. There's no contemporary account of the naked ride. Not a single one. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, our main source for this period, mentions Leofric and Godiva frequently, but says nothing about a protest ride. The first mention of the story appears almost 200 years after it was supposed to have happened, in the writings of a monk named Roger of Wendover. As the story was retold over the following centuries, it got more and more elaborate. The detail about the townspeople all staying inside was added later, and the character of Peeping Tom, the tailor who supposedly couldn't resist a look and was struck blind for his trouble, wasn't added until the 16th century. So, if the ride probably didn't happen as we know it, does that mean the whole thing is a lie? Not necessarily. This is where we get into the secret motives. Historians have proposed some fascinating alternative theories that reframe Godiva's actions in a completely different light. One popular theory suggests the story isn't about a tax protest at all, but about a public act of penance. In the medieval Christian world, public humiliation was a common form of penance for serious sins. A noblewoman appearing in public dressed only in her shift, a simple linen undergarment, not complete nudity, would have been a profound act of humility and religious devotion. It's possible Godiva performed such a ritual as a sign of piety, and over the years, the story of her undressing for God was transformed into a story of her undressing for the people. This connects to what we do know about the real Godiva. She and Leofric were incredibly pious and were huge benefactors of the church. They founded and endowed a Benedictine monastery in Coventry. In fact, historical records show that Godiva gave so much of her personal wealth to the monastery that she essentially made it one of the richest in England. This brings us to another intriguing theory. Perhaps the oppressive tax wasn't a tax on the people, but a tax on the church. Rulers often levied heavy tolls on monasteries. Could Godiva's ride have been a symbolic act to protest her own husband's financial demands on the very religious house they had founded together? In this version, she's not just a champion of the poor, but a fierce defender of her religious and financial legacy. Let's explore another angle, one that's even more political. The 11th century in England was a time of immense turmoil. There were constant power struggles between the Anglo-Saxon earls and the Norman-influenced king, Edward the Confessor. Leofric's family was at the center of these conflicts. Some historians suggest that the story of Godiva's ride could be a piece of political propaganda. It might have been invented later to portray Leofric's family, the rulers of Mercia, as being of the people compassionate and just, in stark contrast to the perceived tyranny of other factions, especially the Normans, who would conquer England in 1066. A story about a noblewoman sacrificing her dignity for the common folk is a powerful way to build a positive legacy and legitimize your family's rule. Think about it from a storytelling perspective. You have a powerful landowning woman in a deeply patriarchal society. How do you make her a relatable and beloved figure for future generations? You create a narrative where she uses her femininity and vulnerability in a radical act of defiance for the greater good. The nudity isn't just for shock value, it's a symbol. She's stripping away her status, her nobility, her wealth, and becoming one with the common people she seeks to protect. It's a powerful image, whether it happened literally or not. So what's the secret motive? The truth is, there might not be just one. It's likely a complex mix of possibilities. The historical Godiva was a wealthy, powerful, and deeply religious woman. She was a political operator in a turbulent time. The legend of Lady Godiva, which grew over centuries, likely blended elements of her true character with folklore and political spin. The kernel of truth might have been a public act of religious penance, a symbolic gesture related to her patronage of the Coventry monastery. This act of public humility, so shocking for a woman of her status, could have easily been misinterpreted or deliberately respun over time. It morphed into a tale of tax protest because that made for a better, more universally appealing story. What this new perspective reveals is a Godiva who is even more fascinating than the one in the fairy tale. She isn't just a compassionate wife reacting to her husband, she's a strategic player, a woman who understood power, religion, and legacy. Whether her famous ride was an act of piety, a political statement, a protest against church taxes, or a complete fabrication designed to burnish her family's reputation, it shows that she was a woman who made a massive impact. The fact that we are still talking about her, debating her motives 1,000 years later, is a testament to her incredible influence. The legend may not be literally true, but it speaks to a deeper truth about a remarkable woman who defied the conventions of her time. The secret motive wasn't just one thing. It was the complex ambition of a woman navigating a man's world and securing her place in history. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the real story of Lady Godiva. What do you think? Was she a pious penitent, a political mastermind, or the people's champion? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this historical investigation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Until next time, stay curious.